Welcome class to Chapter 7, User Input and While Loops. In this chapter we are going to find out how we can accept user input from our visitors. So let's think of a simple example of how we could obtain a voting age from a user of our program. So to do this we would need to write a program to answer that question. You would need to know how to get the user's age before you can then provide an answer to them on whether they're old enough to vote. So we are going to explore the input function to do so. We will also look at while loops inside of Chapter 7 and also how we can use while loops with dictionaries and lists. So I'm going to break Chapter 7 up into 3 separate lecture videos. The first lecture video is going to cover our input function along with the integer method, and then the second video will cover the while loops, and our last video will cover using while loops with lists and dictionaries. So in this first video we are going to cover the first 4 objectives: how the input function works, writing clear prompts, using INT integer to accept numerical input, and then lastly we'll cover the modulo operator. So how does the input function work? Well, we simply code input and then we give it either a variable holding a string, or we actually give the string to the input function. So once Python receives that user input, it can return whatever the user enters as long as you store it in a variable. So make sure that you always have something on the left of your input function and it's using the assignment operator of the equal sign. So let's look at our very first example, and it's called parrot.py. And in parrot.py we're just simply creating an input method, assigning it to message, and then giving the output of message. So here is the thing with the Sublime text editor. We cannot run any program that has the input method right inside of Sublime. You need to go ahead and open up your command prompt or your terminal to go ahead and run your input function. So let's go ahead and do that. I have mine on my desktop, and I'm actually going to do this so that I can get to the level that perhaps maybe you're at when you open yours up. So typically it's right to your users and then whatever your username is if you're in a Windows system. So to get to where you have stored your Chapter 7 files, or where you're going to store those Chapter 7 files, I want you to use File Explorer. So you have your files organized. I have my files on my desktop in a folder called Python Work, and here is my Chapter 7 folder. So in Chapter 7 I can look at the breadcrumb trail here at the top, and if I right click on that last folder I can copy the address. Then when I'm in the command prompt I can go cd and then paste that address in, and it will take me directly to that directory. So from here we can then execute our Python files that contain input methods. Okay? So for this one it would be Python and then it's parrot.py. So I execute and it says tell me something, and I'll repeat it back to you. And that's exactly what is in parrot.py in our input method. So I'm just going to say hello, and then it repeats that back to me because that's what was stored inside of message, and we printed out message. So it's important for you to understand that you cannot run any program that has an input method through Sublime itself. There are other editors that allow you to do that, but Sublime does not. So we need to take it into your terminal and then Python and then the name of the file that you're going to run. And we could have done this for other chapters too, and you can continue to use this if this is how you want to test. But any program with the input function, this is how we're going to go ahead and test. Okay, use your up arrow to get previous commands if you haven't recalled that. Let's look at how we can write clear prompts so that users supply the information to us that we want. So include a clear, easy to follow prompt that tells the user exactly what information to enter. So be clear and concise. And then add a space at the end of your prompts to separate the prompt from the user's response and to make it clear to a user that they need to enter text. So in this example here, we don't have a space, and I should have a space there. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, and I'm going to run it. So yeah, you probably saw right here, it's right next to the colon. So I'm going to rerun parrot.py. Now I have a space there, and it looks like now I need to provide information. So we'll just do by, and then repeats it back. Use plus equal, okay, it's called concatenation assignment, to build prompts over more than one line. So we're going to look at the example greeter.py on page 115. It actually starts on page 114. So let's start on page 114 first, and then we're going to build it into page 115. So here is greeter. Same thing that we did before. Input, please enter your name. Now we just have a little bit more on our output. So I'm going to go ahead and run that from my command prompt. So please enter your name. And then we have the output, hello. Notice we have a line feed, both the /n, and then a space, and then of course our variable and our output. So we build that into more than one line by the example on page 115. So I'm just going to comment these lines out and then bring in the code from page 115. So now we have a prompt that extends over more than one line. So we might have that situation where we just have to give them more information about what information we want back. So if you tell us who you are, we can personalize the message you see. I should say you see, get that typed right. And then we do a line feed and what is your name. So this is what is initially stored in the variable prompt. And then we add in, by concatenating with the plus equal, another set of text. So let's go ahead and run this one. Let's give it a save first. And then rerun greeter.py. So now we have it over 2 lines. Okay, so that's your example when you have to build a prompt with lots of information in it. Now we're going to talk about the integer method. So input from a user is always interpreted as a string data type, and that goes across multiple different programming languages. If all you want to do is print the input, that's fine because strings print out beautifully. However, if you want to take that input and do some numerical comparisons with it or some math with it, you will go ahead and get an error if you try to do math on a string. So let's do some examples through the command prompt to demonstrate this. I'll make my window a little bigger here. And I am going to enter in what's at the bottom of page 115. So remember when you see the 3 greater than symbols, okay, you're going at the Python prompt. So now I'm going to type Python here so that I'm in the Python prompt, and I'm just going to start to enter. So age equal input, how old are you? Space, again creating that nice easy to read prompt. Okay, so now it's going to prompt me with that. How old are you? Okay, we enter that in. Now that should be stored inside of age, so now I'm going to just type the variable name age and I get back the string 27. So remember that input, whatever we get, is always stored in a string. Now if I need to convert that for math reasons, comparison reasons, I'm going to run that through the integer function. So as simple as age equal integer and run age through it. Now when I do age back, I get numerical number 27. So remember that you always need to run any numerical input that you're getting from your user through the integer function. Otherwise, you get a traceback error. So let me go ahead and do this prompt again. So age now is string again, and I'm going to do a comparison on it. So is age greater than or equal to 18? Here is my traceback error. So it says not supported, so this greater than or equal, not supported between instances of string, okay, because that's what age was a string and integer. Okay, so again, make sure you always run it through the integer method, convert it over so that you can do comparisons or addition, subtraction, those kind of things. Let's also look at roller coaster. So in roller coaster, we can see that we're using the integer function on height. So we get how tall they are, stored in height, make sure it's numerical input so that we can go ahead and do our comparison. And I got to get out of the Python prompt here. Now, to do that, it's exit. Okay, so now I'm going to execute Python file rollercoaster.py. So how tall are you in inches? Let's go with 48. Yep, you're tall enough to ride. So let's do that again. Run it. 46 inches. You'll be able to ride when you're a little older. So that's the exact output that we would expect from this, because if it's equal to 48, yep, they're tall enough to ride. Else they're not. One more example, we're going to look at even and odd, even or odd. So even or odd on page 117 is using the modulo operator. So the modulo operator divides one number by another number and returns the remainder. So returns the remainder, okay, not the actual whole number, okay, or I think it's called the dividend. Can't remember. No, maybe I can't remember the exact term for it. So we won't model it even more. So if we take a number, let's just say the number is 12, and we divide that by 2, we get 6, remainder 0. Okay, because it's an even result on that division. If we take the number 13 and we divide it by 2, we get 6, remainder 1. Not 6.5, because that's the decimal version of it, but we're looking just for the remainder. Okay, so the remainder would be 1. So in that case, we would be down here and it would be print odd. Okay, so if it's evenly divisible by 2, it's going to have a remainder of 0, else it's not. And that's how we get into the odd side. So same results here. So let's go ahead and run even or odd from our command prompt because we're getting input. Enter a number and I'll tell you if it's even or odd. So let's go through 12. So 12 is even because the remainder was 0. And put 13 in. Number 13 is odd because again our remainder was 1. So that ends the first section. Let's go ahead and look at the lab that we need to complete, and that is 7-2 restaurant seating. So write a program that asks the user how many people are in their dinner group. If the answer is more than 8, print a message saying they'll have to wait for a table. So this example of roller coaster is a great example to follow. Okay, if you have any questions on this first section, or if you're having difficulty with executing from your terminal, please let me know. Thank you.